Flexbox is a CSS layout system that helps make your page become more responsive. So let's look at how this works. For my setup, inside the body here, I have got a div that has a class of flex container. You can name that whatever you want. This will just hopefully make more sense this way. Inside of that container, I have got 3 divs. They each have a class of box, so we can give them all the same rules at once. And then they have a second class, which you can put by putting a space, of 1, 2, and 3, so we can give them individual rules. I've also went ahead and put in some style tags up here in my head tag, so I can just do the CSS right here on the same page. So as you can see over here on the side, I've got 1, 2, and 3 because that's all the content that I have in my divs. It's not doing much at this point. Let's go ahead and give the flex container, which has a class of, it's dot flex container. And we're going to give it a background color of white just so we can see this. And then let's go ahead and start talking to the boxes, right? These divs down here with the class of box next. So we're going to come down and talk to dot box. So all 3 of them will have the same rules at the same time. And we're going to give this a minimum width of, let's say, 200 pixels. We'll give it a background color of Dodger blue. And let's go ahead and give it a padding so there's some space on the inside, since all we have for content is a 1, a 2, and a 3. Let's say 40 pixels. Let's go ahead and save that and look at it, and you can see it's taking up the complete full width because these divs, right, these divs are block elements, so they stack in a block. They take up the full width and stack. Inline elements, remember, like links and pictures, would stack in a line, like left to right. There's another display property that you can use, which is called flex, hence Flexbox. So on this container, right here, we're going to put a display of flex, which will make all the items inside the container, whether they're links or pictures or divs like we have, they'll flex. So let's look at how that works. So we'll put in display, and we'll put in flex, and instantly you can see they pop up in a row right next to each other. So if we had a maximum width, so they couldn't get any bigger than that, you can see that they're all sitting right next to each other in a line. Let's put a little space between these to make this make a little more sense. So I'm going to put in some margin around each of those divs. Let's just put in 10 pixels. And you can see, right, they sit there. They have a maximum width of that. They cannot get any bigger than that. So if we go in and put in a minimum width now, save that and refresh it, you can see they take up the available space that is there. Now, let's do a little bit more. If I start to push these, right, you can see if I stretch the page out, they're each taking up a minimum width of 200 pixels. They got to be at least 200 pixels. But we could actually make them larger than that. So if we go in and inside of the child elements, which are these divs inside the box, you can use something called flex grow. And that is basically telling them to take up any available space that is there. So all 3 of them have a growth rate of 1. So if I refresh that and I start to stretch this page, you can see that no matter how big I stretch it, they all stretch to fill in that room. Okay. Now, as we push the page this way, they'll have a minimum width of 200 pixels, which means there's not enough room for them right here. And so you start getting this horizontal scroll bar on the page, which you never want on a web page. That's not good. So something that's basically the same as this minimum width, but works for Flexbox, is called Flex Basis. Okay, and that's kind of does basically the same thing. It's just that when you get to that edge, it's gonna keep it on the page, so you never get that horizontal scroll bar. So you can do that as well. But for now, I'm just going to leave that to kind of demonstrate here. So let's leave our minimum width here, right? So once we get to that size, it's just not gonna work for us, right? It's going to push it off the edge. So something you can do in this case is on the flex container, instead of telling the items to stay in this row, we can actually say, hey, when there's not enough room, go down to the next line, wrap to the next row. So right here, we can say flex direction, and the default is row, right? And this is not going to wrap it, but the default is row. You could also do something like a column, and you can see that would pop it automatically into a column, and you could actually do it in reverse. If we say column reverse and save that, you can see that now it goes 3, 2, 1, and you can do the same thing with row. You can put rows in reverse, but the default is row. We've already got a row, so that's fine. But the next thing we're going to want to do is flex wrap, like I said. So if we go down to flex wrap, we can tell it to wrap, wrap in reverse, or not wrap at all. The default is no wrap. So we're going to tell it to wrap, and when I save that, you'll see that they take up 200 pixels. They have to be at least 200 pixels, and once there's not enough room, that last item goes down to the next line and automatically takes up the full width. And if I keep pushing down, as soon as there's not enough room, the next item moves down, and so they're now in a column, which is wonderful for things like mobile phones, tablets, since you're viewing on different devices. So that's something that's really helpful. Now we can also go in and make each of these boxes have its own color and maybe be a different size. So let's do that. So let's make this just a bit larger so we can see all three. So we're going to come down here and we're going to talk to the first div by putting in class.1 to talk to that class of 1. And we're going to give it a background color of, background of red. And we'll say flex grow. And we're going to give this just 1 for now. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this one off of all of the boxes. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to paste it a couple of times. And we're going to change this to 2 so we can talk to that second div. And we'll change this to 3 so we can talk to the third div. If we save these, they're all red. So we're going to change this one to green. And we'll change this one to blue. Feel free to use whatever colors you want. And just to show you, right, this has a growth rate of 1. This does as well. This does as well. So I could change this to 2, and I could change that to maybe 4. So this one will grow 4 times faster than this one. This will grow double the speed. So if we save that and refresh the page, you can see they all look similar sized, but as I make them grow, you can see they're growing at different rates. So maybe if you want your page to be set up different to start with, you could maybe make that one, 1, that one 1. Let's make this center one to be 4, and go ahead and save that, right? And that will, make these two smaller than the middle one. So you can do things like that as well. Now, for laying out items even easier, you can use things like flex start and flex end. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and remove some of this stuff temporarily. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut this out and save it. And we're back to the starting point here. So let's go ahead and actually make these 100. And that way they all fit on the same line. And you can see they're all fitting here on the left. In fact, let's make them just a little smaller so this makes sense. Oops, not 500. They're all sitting here on the left side. And you can use something like justify content. And so we could center the items if we wanted to, put them in the center. You could say flex end. Flex start is the default on the left side. Flex end, we'll put them over there on the end. You can also do things like putting in space around, and that will put an even amount of space around all of them, or even space between, which will put the first and the last items against the edges and put an equal amount of space between them. Possibilities are just about limitless. You can do several things with this. So on the project page itself, you will see that there is a reference sheet, right, that you can use to kind of remember how to use these different items. The parent items are ones you would put on the container, the flex container that's holding the flexible items. These are things you can put there, such as, right, the flex container here, all these different things you would put there. And then you have the children, which are all the items inside of that flex container. And here's the different things that you can put on them, right? So use that to your advantage. So when you are finished experimenting with this and you're ready to turn it in, try to have something similar to this, where you've got, 3 divs in there. They're different colors. They stretch and they grow as I move the page. And then when I get to a point where there's not enough room left, they'll actually wrap down to the next line. So get something similar to this, and then just go ahead and submit the HTML file.